Welcome to the Living Well Church podcast, and thanks for tuning in today. Our mission as a church is to help people find faith in Jesus and a life of purpose and hope. You're about to watch a message that will challenge you, inspire you, encourage you, and most of all, point you to Jesus and the life of purpose and hope He has planned for you. So lean in and enjoy, and let God speak into your life.
Good evening. It's really great to see you. Thank you all for coming out on Christmas Eve. I absolutely love this time on Christmas Eve, 4 p.m, when the shops close and you simply cannot do any more. My friend the other day rang me really distressed in the morning, and she said, "Beth, you're never going to believe it." And I said, "What?" And she said, "I've been arrested." I was like, "You've been arrested? What for?" She said, "Because I did all my Christmas shopping too early." I thought, you can't be arrested for doing your Christmas shopping too early. And then she replied, "Yeah, but it was before the shops were even open." So some of us love Christmas shopping, don't we? Some of you are sat there so smug because you were ready about a month ago, having all the presents bought. Some of you are probably a little bit like my husband and I, who are still dashing around the shops frantically on Saturday, pushing people out the way. No, we weren't doing that. We're good Christian people. Nudging people very gently out the way to get those last chocolate Santas, and scouring the stores for Manchester United memorabilia because your father-in-law decides to support a second-rate team. So we aren't very good at being organised with our Christmas shopping, but we still hunt the length and breadth of stores to ensure that our family, our loved ones, get the gifts that we know they'll really love. I don't know if some of you are sat there with similar stories to tell, that maybe you have done a similar journey like Frodo, trying to reach Mordor, in trying to get that one gift that your loved one really, really wants. My parents never let me live down that one year they literally went through every single Toys R Us, every Gamleys, every Argos, from here to Scotland, to try and find a singing Ariel doll. And I played with it for about 5 minutes after that. But we often at Christmas time, don't we, go head and tail, bend over backwards to try and find the gifts that we know our kids or the people we love really want. You know, in England, it's about £434 on average one person spends on Christmas presents. And Harlan Miller, a famous writer, puts this in a really positive way. He says that maybe the reason why we have this so unrestrained giving at Christmas is because we very simply don't know how to put our love into words. And I'm about to tell you a story and look at a simple couple, two parents, who had the responsibility of delivering a gift 2017 years ago to this earth. And maybe it's because a God in heaven simply just wanted to give us something in a really unrestrained way because He couldn't quite put His love for us into words. So these two parents, Mary and Joseph, you've heard them, Jane read to you about them, and also you've seen a very interesting take on Mary and Joseph as well tonight. Mary, they were a very, very unlikely couple to bring the Saviour of the world here. Mary she was contracted to marry Joseph. And typically at that time, when you hit puberty, when you became like a lady, which is about 13 years of age, that is normal time for that contract to be put into place. So it would have been really normal for Mary to have been about 13 years old. So just imagine being 13 years old, being told that you've been pregnant. And this is the time when there was no gas and air. There was no regular checkups at the doctor. There wasn't an app to tell you and to track the size of your baby, going from sesame seed size to avocado size to banana size. Those of you that have been mothers know those apps I'm talking about. There wasn't any of that for a 13-year-old girl in Bethlehem, in Nazareth. Nothing like that existed. A really unlikely girl. But also, at that same time, not only was she 13 years old, but because she was having a baby outside of marriage, unfortunately, this was a complete social disgrace. She would have been outcasted by her community. And Joseph, too, as a parent, had to stay with Mary and thought, as we heard from Jane, thought about divorcing her because of the disgrace that would have been associated with her. But an angel appeared to him and told him to stay with her, so he did. And then on top of this, Google Maps tells me that it's a 33-hour walk from Nazareth to Bethlehem. So this poor, pregnant 13-year-old with this father who's had to stay with her, travel on a donkey for 33 hours walking. And then they finally reach Bethlehem, and there is nowhere for them to stay. If I was anything like Mary, I would have probably given up an awful long time ago. But they didn't. There was something unbelievably unstoppable in their determination to make sure this gift from God was delivered into the world. And similarly, we have some shepherds. Shepherds were the lowest of the low at that time. They geographically lived on the outskirts of the city, kind of representing how they were kind of outcasted to the outside of society. And angels told them that there was this baby about to be born. So despite their social standing, they are unstoppable in going to see this baby. And then there's some kings, the other social side of the social spectrum, the highest of the high, some wise men from the east, and they journey hundreds of miles to see this baby. And on top of that, the most powerful man in Bethlehem at the time, King Herod, wants that little baby dead. And yet, not even he can stop this baby. So this story unwraps these characters, the shepherds, the kings, Mary and Joseph, who have this unbelievable, unstoppable hunger to make sure this baby is delivered into the world. Why? Why on earth would they be so unstoppable? And I think it's because they know that that baby is going to grow up to be the savior of the world. And for me, you might think that's a bit confusing. I don't understand that. So for that to take place, I need to unravel that and go right back to the beginning of time. I need to go back to where God created the world. And he put two people called Adam and Eve in it. And God had a complete, really great, perfect relationship with Adam and Eve. He could walk with them, he could talk with them completely freely because there was no sin, that's like wrongdoing, that stopped him from having a great relationship with them. There was no sin, there was no shame, there was no guilt, there was no lies, there was no thievery. Nothing like that existed. So God, Adam and Eve lived in perfect harmony with perfect relationship. But God, because he's such a good parent, gave those two free will. And unfortunately, with that free will, they decided to ignore God, ignore his advice, disobey him, do wrong, and hide from him. And unfortunately, then what we read in the Bible, this fantastic historical document, is this huge, great, lovely, wonderful, gritty, real, and raw love story about how God consistently tries to pour out his unstoppable love and make up this relationship with his people who unfortunately time and time and time and time again ignore him and do wrong and disobey him and hide from him. And maybe even now you're sat there and you can see that a little bit in yourself. Maybe there's been little coincidences in your life where you might think, hang on, there might be somebody up there looking after me. But you've chosen to ignore him. Or actually, if we're all honest, we've chosen to do wrong. I'm sure every single one of us here has lied at some point in our lives, has hated at some point in our lives, has been angry at some point in our lives. And maybe there's things and you're sat there with and nobody else knows what you've done, but you know they're wrong things. And sometimes maybe you know God and you've had a good relationship with him, but actually recently it feels like you've been hiding from him. And so unfortunately, history continues. God tries to show us his unstoppable love. Right through the Bible, he performed miracles to his people. He parted seas. He made water come out from a rock. He gave food out of nowhere for his people. He defeated evil for his people. He also continued to put prophets, people who hear directly from him, on the earth to speak for him. He rose up kings in countries to rule places for him. He consistently poured out this huge, unstoppable love, but the story was the same. We ignored him. We did wrong. We disobeyed him, and we hid from him. So therefore, 2017 years ago, God, in his kind of last-ditch attempt, does what he can do. He kind of like makes this last attempt to really reach us, connect to us, and have relationship with us. So he sends himself. He sends part of himself in his son, Jesus Christ, and he comes down from heaven, the perfect place, full of light, and he sends his son in a dark and dingy stable, and he sends him as a form of a vulnerable baby. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but our society can't ignore a baby. We just can't do it. We can't do harm to a baby. We can't do wrong to a baby. And we can't hide from a baby. You know, I remember when I first had my son, Ralph, and he was tiny, and I would wheel him down the town, Dover, obviously. I don't know if you can tell by my Doverian accent. And I'd wheel him in my pushchair, and people would just flock to see him. There's something about a baby that we can't ignore. You know, this year we had the Fenfield Towers, and I don't know if you can remember that unreal moment in news history where a mother, in her desperate attempt to save her baby in that tower, in that burning tower, threw her baby out of a story window, and a stranger below caught the baby. We as society cannot ignore a baby. We can't do wrong to them, and we can't hide from them. And God knew this, and so to show his unstoppable love, he sent his son in the form of this vulnerable, beautiful baby. But that son grew up. And as that son grew up, it started to teach us how to live, how to forgive, how to serve one another. He performed miracles and healed the sick. And so the relationship between us and God, between the people and God, started to repair. People started to not ignore him. People just started to obey him. But unfortunately, those thousands of years and all of that wrongdoing that had got in the way, the lies, the cheating, the gossiping, the anger, the hurt, was still all there. And unfortunately, there had to be consequence for that. So that tiny, vulnerable baby, he grew up, and he took the worst punishment at that time. In that time in Israel, the chief kind of crime for the worst kind of offenders was to be hung on a cross. And so he took that crime for all of our wrongdoing, for all of your wrongdoing. So that if we just believe in him, then when God looks at us, he sees the clean, perfect record that Jesus lived, instead of all the things, all the wrongdoing, all the times we ignored him, all the times we hid from him. Instead of that, he sees the perfect relationship that his own son, Jesus, had with him. And you might say, Beth, that sounds a bit crazy. That sounds a bit confusing. And I don't get what it has to do with Christmas. But I really want you to know this, and I'll summarize it in an analogy. Summer this year, my in-laws took me to Dymchurch Railway. I don't know if you've ever been there. Anybody nodding heads? You're all asleep. It's quite dark, I can't see you too well. But we went to Dymchurch Railway, and I'm not sure if you know, but all the platforms are on the same level. And I was waiting there with Ralph. Ralph was 2 at the time, and his granddad had just bought him this orange ball. So he obviously thought this orange ball was the best thing ever. And we were playing with it just gently on the side, on the grass. And I said to Ralph, we're just going to play here just a little bit with you and me on the grass. And we have to throw the ball in this direction because the trains and the tracks were in that direction. We played for a while. And then, as I turned to speak to my in-laws, that thing as a parent you never want to happen, happens. And my son turns and he throws that orange ball across the tracks. And I don't know if you've ever had one of these moments as a parent, that moment where everything could change in an absolute instant. But for me, it was right there, and it was right then. As I saw my son run across the train tracks, chasing an orange ball as a train was coming. And you know what? Nothing goes through your head apart from the fact that you have to reach your child. Nothing goes through your mind apart from the fact that you just have to get him before it's too late. And do you know what? I picked him up and I remember just holding him and I remember just being a little bit angry, if I'm honest. But later that night, it didn't really dawn with me the significance and how poignant and how everything could have changed until I went home that evening. And I was just so thankful. And I was so thankful for this, that I was just with my son. That I was just with my child. And do you know what? Some of you, if I'm being really honest, life is like chasing that orange ball. You're chasing something that you think looks great, that you think looks lovely. Maybe it's a great house. Maybe it's the ideal relationship. Maybe it's a cozy Christmas with no arguments. Maybe it's a good car. Maybe it's a great career. I don't know what you're chasing, but something that looks attractive and you're chasing it. Completely unawares that there's a parent standing there, right so close to you, watching you. And what I want you to know tonight is that parent, at whatever point in your life, there is God. And he is standing there and he's been watching you. And you know, whatever you're chasing in life, whatever there is, he, in this unstoppable, unrestrained way, is just chasing you and pursuing you. And all he wants to do is pick you up and hold you and just be with you. And I can promise you this, you might not think that it's a coincidence that you're here tonight, but I 100% know the way the Lord works, and I think that it is no coincidence that you are here tonight. And I believe wholeheartedly that you just need to hear that there is the unstoppable love of the Lord chasing you. And he won't want to stop until you're in his arms, until very simply you are with him. Paul says in Romans in the Bible, he says, what can separate us from the love of God? And he says, nor death, nor life, nor angel, nor demon, nor anything past or anything present, nor height, nor depth, nor anything in creation can separate you from the love of God. Merry Christmas.